G'day there, folks. Welcome to the Stringybark podcast, a Bushwackers podcast, where Dobe Newton over there,
hello there, folks,
and me, Roger Corbett, talk about our long career in the Bushwackers and the life and times of us and the music industry, the country music industry, the folk music industry, and all the little places in between. And we base it around taking one song out of our very large repertoire of songs and talking about it in a historical context and all the little bits and pieces about how that song came into being and what it did and what it went, where it went, and all that sort of stuff. So this is Stringybark, and we're going to talk about the song that I was responsible for creating. I guess it's called "Beneath the Southern Cross."
Yes, so this is your turn to talk, Rog.
My turn to talk.
But just to provide a bit of context.
Yes, no?
So up until the time that Roger wrote this song, we were basically reinterpreting the Australian folk tradition. So all the songs that made up our repertoire were drawn from the folk music canon, which had existed for 100-odd years. And so, you know, the Ryback Shearer and Lime Juice Tub and
Lazy Harry,
Lachlan Tigers and Billy of Tea and Lazy Harrys, all of those songs had been played by umpteen performers over the years and had survived, and we had discovered them and reinterpreted them, and we'd basically just about exhausted all the well-known songs. So there we were, sitting around, and it was time to record another album, and we'd been approached by a television marketing company.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. And their name was Telmac. Yes. And their particular shtick was that they got people to record albums which were only available as a TV promotion. And we were pretty excited because having your album promoted on mainstream free-to-air television meant that there was a very good chance that it was going to sell an awful lot of records.
Yes.
And so
absolutely,
we were approached by them, and we needed to do a new album. And in order to do that new album, we needed some songs.
That's right.
So I'm going to ask you, Rog, now to tell us about how you came to write Beneath the Southern Cross.
Okay. Well, I'd just joined the band. I think it was maybe in the first year that I joined, which was 1980, and we'd been approached by a writer or producer, John Romerell.
Famous Australian playwright.
Famous Australian playwright. And he'd turned a book called Carboni, which was all about, I guess, an Italian migrant in the Eureka Stockade.
Raffaello
Carboni.
Mm.
And he'd been involved in the Eureka Stockade. So the Eureka Stockade story is quite a significant sort of milestone turning point in Australian culture, because the miners banded together against the then British government and refused to pay this extra tax that was placed on their licenses, and the police force at that stage was recruited from the roughest and ex-crims, really, basically, and people who would just deal out rough justice to these miners as they hunted them down through, you can imagine what a gold mining field looked like in those days. A bunch of hillocks and lots of deep holes and people living very rough. Henry Lawson tells a story where he's looking for gold, I think somewhere in New South Wales, and he was waist deep out near Oberon or somewhere like that, and he's waist deep in muddy water trying to just dig out, look for that elusive metal. And that's how rough it was in those days.
And there were thousands of people gathered in very small places, and your claim for which you paid for your miner's right, your claim was very small.
Yep.
And the chances of you making enough money to pay for your licence was likewise very small. So it was subsistence living, and the government regarded this as an opportunity, of course, to keep raising money.
Yeah.
So they kept increasing the tax to a point where the miners just said it was unsustainable.
Yeah.
And so they protested.
Absolutely. And in true sort of frontier style, they burned the pub down.
They did.
And
the Eureka Hotel.
That's right. And of course there was this feeling, because a lot of the people had come from Europe, and really it had tripled Melbourne's, or, exploded Melbourne's population at that time.
Oh, absolutely.
All these people from all over the world,
Yep.
Americans, Italians like Raffaello Carboni.
I think there were, at last count, there was something like 30-odd nationalities represented among the diggers on the goldfield.
The diggers, yeah. So there was meetings, of course, as you have, and lots of protests and all that kind of thing at the in Ballarat, and
on
they
Bakery
designed
Hill.
a flag. They designed this blue flag with the white cross on it and the stars to represent the Southern Cross, and they called it the Southern Cross flag, and it was
Designed
stitched.
by a Canadian.
Designed by a Canadian. There you go.
Captain Ross, who was ex-Canadian military
Right.
person.
And obviously a bit of a graphic designer.
Well,
Very
obviously
sad.
so.
And lots of hand sewed this flag together. That was the flag that they raised and fought beneath at the Bakery Hill confrontation, where after lots of protests and lots of meetings and lots of angry words and police brutality, they eventually marched up this hill and stood there with picks and shovels behind a stockade, the Eureka Stockade, and the soldiers marched up the hill and shot them down and arrested a whole bunch of people.
Yep.
At that,
They expected, so they always expected that there would be trouble, a confrontation. And so after this meeting on Bakery Hill, where they read the proclamation and took an oath
Yep.
that they wouldn't be subjugated and would protect one another, they erected a stockade and armed themselves with whatever was available, including a few guns, but mostly pikes and shovels and sticks and stones. And, of course, confronting them were the military, because the government had called in the army to supplement the police force who were enforcing the licences. And on Sunday morning, when most of the miners who'd been in the stockade had gone home, they didn't expect anything to happen on the Lord's Day. And so most of them, as I said, had gone home, and it was at that point that the military decided to take decisive action, and so they marched on the stockade, and basically there was almost no resistance. So they shot people down in cold blood, basically. And Peter Lawler,
Peter Lawler, that's right.
who was one of the leaders of the miners, was wounded but escaped.
Right.
And he was hunted, and eventually a number of the miners were captured, and the ringleaders were brought to Melbourne and charged with treason. Now, on the face of it, it was a lay-down misère. You know, they had opposed the government, the duly elected government, and with the intention of violence. And so they were rebels, basically.
Well, I think they were called rebels.
They were.
And we talk about the rebel flag and all that stuff too. Yeah.
And to everybody's great dismay, a jury acquitted them.
That's right.
Which was, you know, despite all the facts to the contrary, the jury said not guilty, which outraged the government at the day. And of course, later on, Peter Lawler was elected to Parliament.
Yeah. I think he became the Speaker, didn't he?
He did indeed, yes. But anyway, sorry, so...
No, that's good, because that story, Eureka Stockade, there's many books on the Eureka Stockade if you want to read the whole saga, and it is quite a saga. And I think when we had this meeting with John Romerell and Bruce Spence, who was this enormously tall actor from Melbourne, and
he was to be Carboni.
He was to be Carboni, and they sort of acted out a couple of scenes for us, and it was quite an inspiring day that we'd spent out there and talking about maybe doing this play and being musical part of this, and perhaps writing this as a musical. So we had a band meeting, as we did in those days, and we sort of said let's write some songs and some music for this whole event. And I think we gave ourselves a couple of weeks to do this. And me having, I guess, well, I should just go back. When I joined the Bushwackers, I said, what would you like me to do? And they said, stand up the back and play bass and keep quiet, which I certainly did for a while. And but then when it came down to writing a song as we progressed through our career and trying to come up with music, new music for the band, I'd had a fair bit of experience writing songs, as I just loved doing it and still do. And
none of the rest of us had, because we'd been busy resurrecting all these folk songs.
That's right. And it just really, it's not really, well, in those days it wasn't really a thing that folk singers would create new songs. It was just all about this traditional and the historic. So anyway, so I just wrote this song called Beneath the Southern Cross, and I think Louis helped me a little bit with the music, and we presented it at the band, and everybody thought it was a good thing, and we started doing it. And I guess the interesting thing was, because it's probably a more contemporary song, it's still in that sort of folky style a little bit, but it's definitely a more contemporary offering than, Ryback Shearer and those sort of things. I think people, our audience, who's predominantly young back then, not so much these days, but they were definitely younger audience back then, I think they all responded and really got on board with this whole thing. And we did amazing shows where people would, sing it out loud and wave the Eureka flag at gigs and wear it on their shirts and all that sort of stuff, and which was really kind of made you realise that they were hungry for things that they could attach themselves to, whereas shearing and swaggies and bushrangers was sort of a bit out of our audiences. They loved all those stories as well, but this was something, where you felt patriotic and you felt Australian and you felt the pain of the diggers who fought in the Eureka Stockade, and
most
you
of those songs were sung in a metropolitan setting.
Yes, that's right. We played mainly the city.
Yeah, so I mean, it's all very well going out to country towns and talking about shearing and droving and all of those rural pursuits, but we were basically playing to young people,
yes,
who lived in the city.
Yes, and in fact, we lived in the city.
Indeed, we did.
And we still have not shorn a sheep, to my knowledge. Have you shorn a sheep?
No, I never have.
And how about droving?
No, I'm not big on horses.
Been a swaggy, have you?
Sort of. Yeah.
We're kind of musical swaggies, I guess.
Yeah.
Around.
But that song's interesting because it was also, not only was it an original song, but in style, it was quite unlike the traditional folk songs that we'd been doing.
Yeah.
So it was a ballad, and it had a power behind it and a lilt to it that really doesn't exist in most of those songs that we were doing at the time. So it was different.
I think the Irish tradition, like the that folk tradition, I think they've got powerful ballads.
Yes,
and
that's
true.
true.
I think the Southern Cross kind of leans towards that end of where it was, and so the Irish and their Town I Love So Well and all those sort of songs,
yes,
and Dublin in the good old days and in the grand old day, whatever that song is, and I think it's sort of in that sort of tradition of that sort of declamatory kind of anthemic kind of thing, but it certainly was new for the Bushwackers to do something like that, and it was a lot of fun,
and the kicker to the story, of course, is that going back to, so that became the title track for this television album.
Oh yes, can we mention the company?
Telmac, yes, we did, called Beneath the Southern Cross.
Yeah.
And we were actually signed to CBS Records at the time, and they let us do this album, which was going to be released by a television-only company. And, of course, we were told that you could expect a minimum of 50,000 units to be sold, and we were going to make $2 per unit. So we thought, to perhaps earn something like $100,000, which in 1981 was a lot of money, more money than we'd ever seen.
Yes, that's right.
And, of course, you know what happened, folks. Telmac went broke. And so we have no idea how many units they actually sold, but we do know that we didn't see any money because they went out of business, and eventually CBS took over the ownership and released the album.
Yes.
But it didn't sell anything like 50,000 copies, and we certainly didn't get $2 for it. Anyway, look.
Story of our lives, folks.
Yeah.
Look, we've managed to survive all these years, but achieving that kind of financial greatness that some people seem to have managed has eluded us.
It's a matter of timing, which has never been our strong suit.
And funnily enough, the contract for a normal record deal goes to about 35, 40 pages of stuff, and the Telmac deal was 2 pages, I think. And we went, "You beauty! This is not much to read here."
Yes.
Anyway.
But listen, thanks, Rog, for sharing that story, and that became our first original song, and you principally have been involved ever since in writing many, many wonderful songs for the Bushwackers, some of which we will talk about in podcasts to come.
Okay. Yes, thanks for listening, folks. Give us a good recommendation. Give us a 5-star review if you like, and let your friends know that you've been listening to this. Play this to your kids and grandkids, and enjoy listening to our podcasts. And thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next one.
Yes, Stringybark, folks.